Hello and welcome to the ARC Automation Studio. I'm Alan Avery, a senior analyst here at ARC. And today we're going to be discussing digital transformation, which has some wide-ranging ramifications for the automation and industrial market as a whole. Today we're going to be looking at it in terms of the enterprise asset management space. And joining me today is Ed O'Brien, a research director here and our EAM specialist. Hey, Ed. Good to see you.
Great, Alan. Thank you very much. And hello, and thank you for being part of this podcast across the board. There are many changes going on in the industry. The EAM market, enterprise asset management market has been probably at least 30 years in the making. It's a quote-unquote mature market, but a lot of the changes are going on. It's an inflection point, partly because of what's happening in digital transformation, but also as we're seeing a lot of IT and OT convergence, and specifically in enterprise asset management. And some of this is due because of the embracement of a software as a service business model, not just because of the model itself being easier to use, purchase prices or overall implementation costs are less. But the other issue is that there is a movement toward the software as a service is prompting customers to look at new systems. So there's a window of opportunity for those companies who have had on-premise systems for perhaps decades, and some are looking at either adding some new functionality via software as a service, but also with hybrid models. So not only because of the benefits of SaaS, but the opportunity for new whether or not to look at new systems is here. And so there's a lot of changes going on. There's many of these changes are part of the changes in enterprises overall. The data management, especially master data management, looking at data quality, deduping, etc. There's also the interoperability issues and integration opportunities that in the past had to be enacted via point-to-point integration. But as now we're looking at integration hubs, and as we'll see, even some other types of technologies such as containers that can allow the ability to use interoperability as a main feature, not just as an afterthought. And these are areas that are exciting, but also challenging for some in the maintenance management world because they've not encountered this. So the issues of being able to work together with IT and OT and looking at elevating EAM, enterprise asset management, to a much higher level is important. And the business processes are now at an enterprise level. So EAM in many organizations is being promoted to an enterprise level resource. And the enterprise asset management has been around for quite a while, but it hasn't always had the ability to be truly an enterprise level application and solution. And it is now because of the fact that it's being required at so many organizations. And it's also looking, one area as this market has matured is that vertical functionality, capabilities is now important. It's always been important, but now it's becoming part of the expectations of an enterprise asset management system. And as we move forward, that's going to be kind of table stakes for many of the EAM vendors.
What would you say are some of the reasons behind the substantial changes we're seeing in the EAM market today?
Yeah, that's a good point, Alan, because there's been a lot of, for probably the last 25 of the 30 years, we've been looking at many organizations that are using reactive maintenance, run-to-failure, and doing predictive maintenance based on time. And while that's it does work very well, it has worked well, it doesn't really give you that glimpse into the future. It doesn't really give you the full opportunity to begin to predict what I should or shouldn't do. And so for the first generation of systems were CMMS, computerized maintenance management systems, and they're still very powerful. but we are evolving more toward enterprise asset management systems that can work not only at a corporate level but also at plant levels, and looking at condition monitoring, working with systems that can have some sort of predictive maintenance capabilities, or in some cases a full-baked predictive maintenance opportunities. But also predictive analytics is another area that's quite important as we're moving forward. The idea of understanding what we should be fixing, when it and looking at the hierarchy of asset management, and looking at the hierarchy of the equipment and asset classes, parent-child relationships, what are the work requests, what are the work orders, but also what will happen perhaps the next shift, perhaps before the next PM cycle, to identify what should be done and shouldn't be done. And in many ways, we're moving toward not only predictive maintenance, but also prescriptive over time. And very few organizations are at that level yet, but to identify what we should do and perhaps what we don't need to do right now. And many organizations are trying to work much more closely on that to identify where what we should be doing and shouldn't be doing. And by shouldn't be doing, meaning may not do that yet, or maybe it's not necessarily a critical asset. It's an asset that can be fixed in an off shift, perhaps, but at least to know what's going on is important. So all of these areas, including preventive maintenance and reliability-centered maintenance, are critical. But we're also moving toward, this is an exciting time where EAM in many organizations, in fact, some of our studies have recently, the briefings we've had, that some organizations are looking at EAM as being an APM, asset performance management type of an app, to be able to meld in these predictive capabilities, meld in the upper and lower control limits of condition monitoring, and not just as an integration point, but also as core functionality or with partners being able to make it a kind of a core capability. And so the idea of adding in these capabilities as part of a high level EAM system is important, but it's also in many ways being a must-have. There seems to be in many of the RFPs an ability to have APM type performance in the EAM system, and in many cases they may integrate, but in many ways even the ERP systems, in some cases MES systems and APM systems, are sharing functionality, or at least in some companies it appears that there's much overlap in this case. And so EAM systems are more the requirements for EAM systems are much more robust, but also the expectations are high. And this is something that the maintenance department and operations department should work on together as they're looking at what type of systems they're working toward.
Makes sense to me. Can you share some examples of the types of data that get used in today's EAM systems?
Sure, Alan. In fact, part of the issue that's going on is that there is all sorts of big data. The term may be overused, but the idea of both structured and unstructured data. And for example, the not only work requests but work orders, inspections. Not only inspection sheets, but also real-time mobile-enabled inspections, looking at augmented reality to work with some instructions with annotated directions and safety plans and work plans. The inspections themselves may have unstructured data. They may have text. They may have others. And all of these may be in data lakes. They may be in data warehouses. They may be in databases. So all of these need to be filtered to provide timely, relevant, and actionable information. And a lot of these systems are offering information from outside systems now too. So whether there's control information, whether there's automation information, there's information coming from the edge, and I might say it's really more data coming from the edge and data coming from other systems that needs to be filtered and made sense of to really provide the information that's needed. And that's one of the differences over the last few years, is that there's more actionable information being made available, and the opportunity is there for highly performing maintenance departments to really use this information on what needs to be done. And so, a lot of data by itself doesn't necessarily provide value, but the information that they derive and the subset of the information, it can be critical to make sure you're reducing downtime and ensuring that you're meeting your service level agreements.
Data certainly has proliferated out there, and it's only going to get worse, I get a feeling. How has digital transformation affected changes in enterprise asset management solutions? Can you address that?
Sure. In many ways, we're in the midst of a movement from last century architecture and app development and infrastructure to next gen type of systems. For example, if you look at from last century, a lot of the app architecture was more monolithic, and it's in many cases started as maybe a mainframe-based systems, maybe went to mini computers, and then the early 21st century we had client server with fat server, thin server, N-tier architecture, and moving today to even today or in the very near future to microservices, which can have capabilities that can be mixed and matched and used when needed to have open interoperability. And in many ways, if you think of an API or an open API, but to be able to have APIs on steroids, in some ways the microservices can be, you can choose, I want this part of a maintenance capability, and I want this to be able to work with my supply chain management system or my ERP system. The microservices allow the opportunity to mix and match as we go along. And within app development, in last century, pretty much we looked at physical hardware and systems that were more physical, and we've gone to early 21st century to look at and use virtual deployment, and then moving toward now to more containers. Again, similarly, the apps themselves can be created much more quickly and much more interoperability provided with the use of these containers. Then the infrastructure itself, moving from a data center environment to hosted private cloud environment, and now more toward cloud, which in many cases is multi-tenant, where depending on the industry, depending on the company, they can level of security, other needs they may need if there are government issues involved, including within cybersecurity for the company, but also within capabilities that are required by different agencies. The cloud deployment can be multi-layered, and all of these are big issues in corporate IT departments, and CIOs are looking at this daily, multiple times daily in some cases. But they've also moved now toward, with EAM being elevated and being promoted, if you will, within the corporate ecosystem. These are important to build highly functional EAM systems as well.
All right. What would you say some of the underlying factors are that have been driving growth in the EAM market?
Sure. The movement from reactive and run to failure strategy, and in some ways it may not have been an official strategy, but it was a de facto strategy, has moved to more automated and the movement from CMMS systems to EAM. Also the ability of, now we're really looking at intelligent systems to be able to sense within an organization. These are driving the growth in EAM, because it's not necessarily a standalone system all the time. It's often an integrated system with other needs within the organization. And software as a service offers a potential for lower costs and risks. Companies are looking at this quite strongly. A lot of the new EAM systems tend to be, at least part of the functionality is software as a service. Others have deeply ingrained systems that are deeply ingrained with on-premise rules, business rules, workflow. So the hybrid system is working as well, but the the ability to use these systems as to move on to the next level. A lot of them are SaaS, and that's creating a lot of this change as well. The increasing automation in asset complexity is also driving a lot of the change. That the actual equipment and the assets themselves are much more complex. And at the same time, the workforce is in some cases aging out. In some cases, the new technologies, whether it's in robotics or other parts of edge computing, require new skill sets or advanced skill sets. So all of this complexity in automation brings everything to a higher level and needs more intelligence in the systems, but also in the users as well. Aging assets require deeper insight into equipment health. We've known this for a while, but it's even more so. The service level agreements of customers and the customer's customers are so high that in some cases almost any downtime is outside the realm of service level agreements. So the aging equipment does not help that. So you have to have this ingrained intelligence in the systems to be able to identify what might happen and what is the mean time to failure, what is the time to refurbish some pieces of equipment, etc. That's all critical for identifying equipment health. And equipment health has always been a topic, but it's getting increased visibility within the C-level to make sure that not only is something not failing, but is it running to the best of its engineering, and will it last? Will it perform as spec'd? And if not, what do you need to do about it beforehand? APM adoption requires a broader and deeper EAM functionality, and that's all, as I mentioned, critical to the newer EAM systems. In fact, some of the EAM systems are taking a nod not only from best of breed but also from ERP systems, and this is upping the level of expectations for customers. And also extended risk management and regulatory compliance mandates have always been important, but they're even more so critical now as you look at things that can affect not only the quality, but the issues such as cybersecurity, issues such as regulatory requirements in documentation, and real-time information as to what is occurring, as opposed to looking back historically if something is failing or about to fail, or if the quality of the product isn't good. That product quality is critical, and it's not just whether a piece of equipment is up or down, but whether or not it's performing as needed.
What trends in the market will have the greatest impact on shaping strategic initiatives for EAM going forward, would you say?
Sure. At the top, there's a resurgence of interest in EAM solutions. While always important, because of the raising of the bar, there's more interest in EAM as not just for work order planning, not just for PM scheduling, but for what do we need to do? What do we collectively need to do to improve the performance of our assets? And so this requirement is really making EAM front and center, and expectations quite high. The reach of and influence of EAM system controls is going to expand. So not only information coming in from edge computers, edge devices more often, but across the board of different systems, and making sense of what the data is saying to make it into information. The EAM systems that provide that information will be on many of the short list of many of the highly asset-intensive companies. The next-gen EAM solutions also add value with digital transformation capabilities. You've got the need to sense for what's going on within the organization, even before something happens. So looking at upper and lower control limits is something we've been doing for a long time in the industry. But to get a sense when you're maybe approaching an upper or lower control limit, approaching an anomaly, maybe there's some noise in the data, but the idea of, for example, with predictive analytics, maybe and machine learning specifically, the models can help identify something before it's really recognizable, and before it becomes something that's really, it could be just some random data noise. And machine learning and analytics are two tools that are going to be and are going to be used even more so to identify something way before something occurs, and to give a sense for what these classes of assets, these asset classes, what are they telling you? So you might have a dozen of one piece of equipment, but if you get an idea when this happens, it's likely to fail in 50 hours or 200 hours. Very powerful in helping to really get a sense of the pulse of the organization. Also, EAM is, as I was mentioning, about becoming more APM-like, and it's very important to have that information at hand as to not only about the future, but also what can we change, what can we do to make something not only last longer but perform better. In some ways, moving toward that coveted and elusive prescriptive maintenance, the idea of what should we do, what shouldn't we do, and what should we alter. If we go on this path, we know we're going to have this issue or that issue. But if we get to the point of being able to change our path with really detailed insight and information, that's critical. And also many, in addition to these topics, there's something else that's kind of ties into the verticalization of the capabilities as well, of using adapting industry standards and best and better practices like ISO 55000 and 55001, American Trucking Association Vehicle Maintenance Reporting Standards, American Public Transit State of Good Repair, looking at, not only from the system, but also the types of equipment that are being managed. What else can we do? And all of these together help to elevate EAM systems to the level that we've all been aspiring to. And now the sensors are relatively inexpensive for edge devices. Memory is cheap, and information can be used by more users. In fact, we have other research about the democratization of data and democratization of analytics that can make it more easy for plant level, floor level power users to be able to take on some of the knowledge management tasks that have only been done by quant teams in those organizations that have quant teams. For those that don't, they really couldn't access the predictive capabilities. So having these industry-centric standards, best better practices, and also all of these IT and OT best and better practices all kind of comes together to make the EAM systems very powerful and very desirable as we move forward. And so my in many ways it's a very exciting time. A challenging time for those who may be used to run to failure and corrective maintenance. Not that that's bad, but it's something we've all done for many years. And it's an exciting time, but it's also challenging for all of us to make sure we sharpen our saws as we move forward.
Thanks for giving us the lowdown on digital transformation and how that plays with EAM. That does it for us in the ARC Automation Studio. Anybody out there who has any questions or needs further information, we're here to help and guide you through the digital transformation journey at your enterprise. So feel free to reach out for us. Until then, thanks for your attention.